Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly think the world revolves around them and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, we've got Karen's running wild yet again, and Opie tells a story about the time people won't stop trespassing on her grandma's property. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So here's a little backstory. A few weeks ago, I started working at a cafe in a recreation center, making minimum wage, so it's a pretty low-key job. At my interview, my manager told me that I don't make enough to have to deal with crazy people, so if I ever encounter one, I can just go and get someone like a supervisor or manager on duty to deal with them, which is important later. On to the story. So to set the scene, I'm working at the register in the cafe, and it's about 20 minutes till the end of my shift. I'm finishing up giving 3 girls their drinks, and then I turn to the register where a woman, the Karen of the story, is waiting. I couldn't tell her age, but she's probably around her 40s. I smile and greet her with a simple hello, and then this happens. The woman says to me, "Water." She said it in a cold tone, but me being my nice self gave her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe English isn't her first language, and that she didn't know how to ask for it any other way. I just smile. I respond, "Okay, did you want a cup or..." She then cuts me off and says, "A bottle of water." Now, at this point, I knew she was being rude on purpose. The woman had a glare permanently on her face, and she gave off a bad vibe. Not to mention the way she just spoke to me as if I was a 5-year-old. I just grit my teeth and force a smile, and I say, "Okay, $2.50. The woman then proceeds to throw a $10 bill at me. And no, the woman didn't try to hand it to me, she literally flicked it in my direction. It ends up swerving and landing on the counter closer to her. At this point, I realize that this woman's trying to start something, and I again do not get paid enough to deal with that. So I simply walk away. I go back to the kitchen where my coworker was making food, and since he's a team lead, I ask him if he can go help her. I also repeated exactly what she said and how she threw the money at me. So coworker goes to cash her out and give her the bottle of water, and all of a sudden, she starts yelling at him, demanding to know my name. He, being the cool guy he is, pretends he doesn't know who was up there and he doesn't give her my name. He then starts to walk back into the kitchen, but Karen follows him, coming behind the counter and saying, "Where is she? I want to know her name. Let me see her face." My coworker puts his hand up to block her from coming any further and starts ushering her back from behind the counter. The woman then proceeds to jolt backwards, hitting her arm on a hanging board that we use to display cotton candy bags, and then starts yelling how he just pushed me, he assaulted me, someone call the police. Now, my coworker is a bit of a hothead, so he curses her out a little before security steps in. It turns out, the guy had seen the whole thing, and he begins to try to calm her down so as not to cause a scene. Finally, my GM hears the commotion and comes over to get everyone's side of the story. The woman starts lying, and she tells her side of the story. She was saying how I supposedly was the rude one, and left her money on the counter and refused to serve her, and my coworker supposedly assaulted her. She's then escorted out by the security guard. My GM listens to my side as well as my coworker, and he believes us over her. Also, he told me that she's been here before and she's known for causing problems. I guess her daughter used to work there and she knows one of my managers, so she basically thinks she owns the place. Suddenly, security comes back in and tells my coworker the woman had called police and she wants to press charges for assault. We all knew that he didn't even touch her, so we just wait for police to arrive. After a few minutes, the police arrive and my GM shows them the camera footage of what happened. They can clearly see that she was lying. So they're all outside, trying to get the lady to drop the matter, because if anyone would get in trouble, it would be her for lying to the cops. Sure enough, the woman gives up, and my GM lets her know that she's not welcome back. He then relays this to us, saying that she's on the trespass list, and if she comes back, we're to immediately call the cops. And I was shocked. All in all, I'm just glad that they were able to get rid of her after she's been terrorizing them for years. What a great start to my new job. Guys, I am so glad that lady was banned, because forget dealing with people like that, right? And all because she happened to know the manager. She thought she ran the place and could bully employees, which is absolutely disgusting behavior. Like, throwing money at people and snapping fingers at them have gotta be the worst things you could do to someone who's serving you. And she should have had that money thrown right back at her. So let me tell y'all about how entitled this neighbor was. She tried to have me be her free babysitter / lifeguard. We had just gotten one of those above ground pools that you set up yourself. It's about 4 feet deep and 14 feet round. We spent the majority of 2 days prepping and filling it and letting it warm. Finally, yesterday it was ready, and my daughter asked if she could invite this girl that she's semi-friendly with from down the street to come swim with her. Since they're 8, they're tall enough to stand with their heads above water, so I say okay. I wanted minimum supervision as I was gonna be outside and occupied with gardening while the 2 girls swam. Well, that was ruined as her little friend brought her toddler sister, who's probably on the younger side of 2. She's definitely too small to stand with her head above the water, and she would require full-time supervision on my part. I tell my daughter's friend that the little sister can't get in the water unless her mom's here to watch her, and then send her home with the message. They both come back, and she says, "Mom says she's fine in her floaties, and I can watch her." At that I say, no, it's not fine. I do not think an 8-year-old is responsible enough to watch a toddler in a pool. And I'm not going to be the one watching her either. You need to tell your mom that either she comes to watch your little sister, or she's not getting in the pool. So they go back home and both come back with a message that the toddler is okay, and that they can be unsupervised. Again, 2 years old, folks. At this point, I'm livid, so I walk back to their house and pound on the door. There's no answer. I keep knocking, and then the garage door opens with this woman backing her car out. I quickly went, and I stood at the end of the driveway with all the kids in tow, both hers and both of mine. The woman then gets out of her car pissed off, and she asks me what my problem is. I tell her my problem is that I'm not her babysitter, and I'm definitely not going to be responsible for keeping her baby from drowning in my swimming pool on my property. At that, the woman then proceeds to start baby talking her own kids in front of me, saying, "I'm so sorry, girls, but the mean lady down the street isn't gonna let you swim. Don't be sad she's ruined your day." She just said random stuff like that. And of course, the toddler bursts into tears, and then Karen screams at me and says, "Look what you've done. You've made her cry and you've ruined her day. I hope you're proud of yourself." She then snatches up little sister who's screaming and tosses her in the car. And then she screams at my daughter's friend to get inside too. The friend is red in the face, and you can tell she's so embarrassed and just mumbles sorry while climbing in the car. Karen then proceeds to peel out of her own driveway while giving us dirty looks, and we just walk back home. Oh man, I can totally feel the embarrassment from that 8-year-old girl, and the way she apologized for her mom's behavior. Guys, I'm pretty sure that's not the first time something like this has happened, and I absolutely hate when people try to make others the bad guy when things don't go the way they want. And I only wish OP responded, "But I am letting you into the pool, darling. Your mom is too lazy to care about your safety, that's all." Like, does that woman not care about the welfare of her child? Like, I'm only asking that because I don't think many parents out there would be okay with their 2-year-old going to some neighbor's house to swim without them being there, right? So my grandmother lives in the countryside at the end of a very long lane in a valley, and she's owned 3 acres of land around her house for the past 30 years. She's essentially bedbound, and she's no longer capable of caring for the land she owns, but she's had a gardener for around 10 years or so we thought. Me and my family live on the other side of the country, and we were unable to visit her for 9 years, but we frequently call her to make sure she's doing okay and to order her anything she needs. One day, she didn't answer the phone, and police found her on the floor. Several windows smashed, greenhouse in shards, and a lot of broken pots. The local teens had decided to start destroying the property for fun, and my grandmother fell, scaring them off, and she was unable to get back up. We traveled to her last year after this incident occurred, and we found the property looking like a mini forest. Grandma's gardener had fallen ill years ago, and she hadn't told us. Therefore, the land became heavily overgrown. This meant that many dog walkers, cyclists, tourists, and holidaymakers had become used to walking through her property, as well as the locals who had used her backyard as their place to hang out. Over the past few months, we've been clearing away all the overgrowth to make it look like a garden again. In this time, many people have tried walking their usual routes, to which we've said that this is actually private property and the official footpath is a few hundred meters down the road. Some accepted this without problem, but others fought us with comments such as, "But we've been walking this way all these years. You don't have the right to tell us to leave," forcing their way past us. Now, we were understanding, as the land did look heavily overgrown, but it is in fact private property, and we needed to keep my grandma safe. One night, we had to call the police on this aggressive group of adults who had set up a small campfire in her garden, and they wouldn't leave. But due to the lack of a clear fence and signage, they were let go almost immediately. So we thought, fair enough. We then set up a fence all the way around the property, with signs and CCTV by the house to enforce the fact that the land was owned and people need to keep out. About 2 weeks later, we came back and we found the fence had been pulled out of the ground completely, so people could continue to hang out on Grandma's property. The private property signs had also been written on and partially set on fire, with lots of aggressive comments and bad language, along with the text saying, "Let us be here or your house is next." The night after we discovered this, we caught a group right up to the house, and my grandma heard them debating how they were going to break in to see what they could steal. They were going to throw a garden chair through the window, but my grandma starts screaming her head off at them, which woke us up and scared them off. We have them on CCTV, and we've passed it on to the police, but we don't know if they're the same group as the ones who set fire to the signs and property. The property now looks more owned and cared for, but even so, the groups of people still keep coming onto the property and breaking stuff and setting fires. We're in the process of getting the CCTV set up so it covers the whole property, not just the house, so that we also have proof for the police. I'm just so scared that I'm gonna get a phone call saying the house has been set on fire. They've already threatened us, and my grandma's been hurt because of these entitled idiots who think they can keep doing what they like on the property, regardless of fences, signs, and police involvement, just because they've been hanging out there for years. My grandmother physically can't stop them, and we can't be there long enough to keep them off the property permanently. Yeah, the post ends right there, but how entitled can some people get, right? Like, that mentality is just baffling. We've been here for years, so despite all the signs and everything, we're not obeying that. Like, guys, I wouldn't even know what to do at this point. Like, those people ripped out a fence that OP's family put up to stop them, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. But let me know what you guys would do. Like, I think if I were in OP's shoes, I'd be looking at getting several big guard dogs or something. And this person comments, 2 words, electric fence. Again, let me know what you guys would do if you were in this situation. I'm a 28-year-old female, and I work at home as a ghost and copywriter. My partner works outside the home. Being that I'm home all day, I get to deal with all the neighborhood solicitors. Most are pleasant enough, albeit a little pushy, and I do get it as it's their job. But after I tell them that I'm not interested, they generally don't come back. Sometimes I'll listen to their spiel, give them a fake number, email address, and that typically does the trick. Other times, I won't answer at all, but they'll keep ringing the doorbell for 20 minutes because my dogs go insane before they leave. Plus, that means they'll try again. So I tend to answer the door regardless. It's annoying overall, but most solicitors get the message after a few failed attempts. Except for this one frickin' company. They've been sending people to my house every single day for the past week. I tell them every time that no, I do not want a free inspection. And no, I don't want my windows replaced. Please take me off your list and go away. But they keep coming back. My partner suggested threatening them, but I'm not confrontational like that. Until last Thursday, when I finally had enough of this entitled BS. It was day 8, by the way, day number 8. I had pulled an all-nighter working for a client that night. Typically, the solicitors come between noon and 3 o'clock, but this morning, they showed up at 10. At that point, they had thrown me out of bed. I was sleep deprived, hadn't showered, and I was very, very annoyed. I also had some questionable stains on my shirts, like chocolate ice cream or something, don't judge me, and my hair was a total mess. And that's when I had an idea. So here's some context. I was a very dramatic teenager who manipulated people to get my way. I have grown a lot since then, but it's not too difficult to turn on the waterworks when a situation warrants it, like this one did. While I no longer make a habit of using my powers for selfish gain, this opportunity was too good to pass up. So as I walked towards the door, I worked myself up into absolute hysterics to really get the point across. It also helped that I had giant bags under my eyes and I looked like garbage. So I just tore open the door, and this is basically how the conversation went. I say, I've been up all night and just got my baby to sleep, and you just started my dogs barking. This had better be effing good. And here's a note, I don't have children. Solicitor number 1 says, oh, I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. We were just wondering, blah blah blah, some stupid crap about windows. Solicitor 2 says, you look like you're busy, but we won't waste a bunch of your time. Listen to this. At this point, I just start crying and screaming. I'm sure the neighbors saw, but whatever. I say, no, you don't understand. My baby is only 18 months old and suffers from, I don't remember what I said, but it was definitely made up. And he hasn't been able to sleep for more than a few hours, and I have to change out his feeding tube every 4 hours because diarrhea keeps leaking out of the hole in his stomach. Now, do you have any idea how hard it is to hear my baby screaming in pain, knowing I'm the one hurting him? And now I finally get him to sleep, and you guys wake him. Hearing me say that, the one guy looked like he was about to cry, and the other guy just stammers out an apology while trying to hand me a flyer. I gotta respect his dedication. I grab the flyer and I threw it on the ground and say, I already have 1,000 of these effing flyers, and I've been using them to wipe up bloody baby crap from every conceivable surface in this house. So unless you're here to help me with that, then you can get the F off my property and never show up here again. I don't think I've ever seen 2 grown men scurry off in a more comical fashion. They were almost tripping over each other trying to get to the car. They didn't show up again after that. Anyways, I do kind of feel bad for them. I know they were just doing their job. But I swear to goodness, if they show up at my door again, I'm calling up that company and threatening them with a harassment lawsuit. Me and my imaginary sick baby are getting pretty damn tired of these a-holes disturbing my workflow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna show up at OP's house ever again after that, and if they do, it'll be super duper surprising. Like sometimes you really just have to resort to using extreme tactics to get annoying solicitors off your back. And seriously, with OP's quick wit and her fake baby, I'm pretty sure she traumatized those 2 after that. So to set the scene, I live in a very small beach town in North Carolina. We get a crazy amount of tourists in the summer months, but not quite as much as Myrtle Beach. We also get our fair share of naive tourists, and during my time as a lifeguard, I probably got asked like 3,000 questions about sharks or jellyfish or stingrays in a day. Instead of saving people from the water, I spent most of my time telling people to stay off the dunes or telling people to not swim up to boats. So anyways, on this day, I encountered a Karen and her son. I saw that there was supposed to be some excellent surf one day, so I decided to head to the beach for a little shredding action. My beach access is a part of a private neighborhood and is paid for by my HOA, which means that it's private property. And once I get up to it, I see a middle-aged woman and her son, who is maybe 6 or 7, standing at the gate, holding floaties. And I think, great, I have a little arguing to do. And I say that because people are supposed to stay off, unless they pay taxes for it to be maintained. So I walk up and the conversation goes like this. The Karen says, hey, what's the code for this beach access? I say to her, well, it's a private access. Are you visiting? I haven't seen your face around here. Where are you staying? The woman then points at a house that isn't part of the HOA. It was developed after my neighborhood was. So I say to her, oh, that house is a part of a different neighborhood. This one uses a public access. See where that sidewalk is? The woman just says, oh, come on, it's right across the street. Just tell us the code. I respond, no ma'am, this access is paid for by us. There is public access literally 50 feet to the left with no code. At that, she screams and says, no, just let me and my son through or I'll call the police. I tell her, go ahead. In the meantime, I'm gonna use the public access. If you care to join me on the beach, then you can follow me on that access. I just left her and her son red-faced like that and walked to the public access. About 10 minutes go by and I kinda forgot about the pair. I'm just putting wax on my board and waiting for my friend to show up in the meantime. That's when I turn away from my board to head down and look at the water, to look for a good spot or a rip current, and lo and behold, I see the kid trying to lift my board and his mom grinning at him. Keep in mind, my board's a 9-footer that has to weigh at least 50 pounds and costs like $700 to $800. I then run back up to the pair and my usually good nature was out the window. I scream, "Hey lady, get the F off of my stuff." She then screams back and says, "Don't speak to me like that, my kid's here." I tell her, "I'll speak to you however I want. Tell your son to stop grabbing my stuff." The kid was sitting on my board at this point and he wouldn't get off. So I yanked it out from under him and he falls forward into the sand. She then screams at me and says, "Get away from my son. Why would you do that? I'm going to sue you. I'm calling the cops." I ask her, "Sue me for what, lady? I'm defending my property. You can't sue me for anything." She then accuses me of being an effing pedo, saying my baby just wanted to see it. He wasn't hurting anyone. At this point, her son's bawling and he's screaming something along the lines of, "Mommy, he broke my rib." To which I say, "Grow up, kid. Nothing is broken. Lady, don't you touch my stuff again or I'll call the police on you." At this point, a lot of people around me are angry at the lady, and I notice my friend shown up and he has a massive grin on his face. The lady then tries to yank the board out of my hands. I snatch it back from her and start running towards the water. Before that, I turn to the kid and say, "Don't turn out like your mom." I then turn and run towards the water, and from what we can see from the waves, the lady's getting shamed off the beach by other beachgoers. So yeah, that's about it. Nothing much compared to some of the absolute BS on here, but still a wake up to me that people like this exist. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r slash entitled people episode. Another one where Karens won't stop getting arrested for wild things. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.